In England, they call bullhorns loud hailers. Loud Hailer will examine the pink elephants of technology, politics, and other important topics. This first episode is culled from the book version of Storyboard of a Dream and centers on Silicon Valley and the rise of big tech. It is called We Are Building a Religion. My religious education has many gaps in it, but I do remember that bit about the Ten Commandments. Maybe it's because I watched the 1956 Cecil B. DeMille movie version at least 20 times throughout my childhood. My friends and I were in it for the scene with the parting of the Red Sea. Now that's what I call special effects. Treating each window of Storyboard of a Dream as a Rorschach test took a complete surrender of rational thought. A temporary naked lunch, if you will, but perhaps not as naked as Victor Hugo, who would instruct his servants to hide his clothes so he couldn't leave the house. It was while I was in this zone that I telepathically received the Steve Jobs rewrite of Moses' descent from the Mount. Instead of a golden calf on an altar, what if what was being worshipped was a giant silicon integrated circuit? Would Moses have smashed the tablets containing the Ten Commandments? Or would they currently be in Bill Gates' safe next to his Da Vinci Codex? Silicon chips have found their way not only into computers, but into every possible electronic device imaginable. They are so ubiquitous today that I find myself asking, was there really a time before digital toasters? I have a faint memory of the analog ones from the 70s working just fine, but maybe that was just a dream from a different storyboard. Our addiction to needless functionality, as well as the irresistible lure of search engines and social media, has distracted us from the fact that large, powerful corporations are able to spy on us and influence us in a manner unimagined, even by George Orwell. In 2017, WeVibe, the makers of a Bluetooth-controlled vibrator, paid $3.75 million to consumers who discovered that the company was collecting data not only on when the device was used, but on how it was used. This wasn't an accident. Chips don't program themselves, but what programmers do is a mystery to most other members of society, sort of like artists, except for the fact that programmers are paid in stock options worth multiple millions of dollars. It started out more modestly, though. The peninsula south of San Francisco got christened Silicon Valley in the 1970s, but the computer revolution began years earlier. One night, when I was visiting friends in Palo Alto, I went out for a walk with my dog and discovered a plaque outside a house that wouldn't inspire a second glance otherwise. In 1939, entrepreneurs Bill Hewlett and David Packard started the information technology revolution in a garage at 367 Addison Avenue in Palo Alto. Their first product had nothing to do with computers, though. They developed a cheaper way to manufacture sound oscillators, and Walt Disney's film Fantasia was their first big break. Several other audio-related products were soon to follow. Had Hewlett-Packard continued down the same path and focused on audio research, they could have become the Dolby of their day. But they changed direction drastically. Together with IBM, they would reign supreme in information technology until a second apocryphal story involving a peninsula garage was born. 40 years later, at 2066 Crist Drive in Los Altos, legend has it that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built their first motherboards for Apple Computer in Jobs' parents' garage. Wozniak later admitted that they got nothing done in the garage per se, but that their first office was indeed Jobs' bedroom. For someone who saw the transition from analog to digital, it is hard to describe how life-changing the computer revolution was. It changed everything, and these two visionaries were literally ground zero. Unlike IBM and Hewlett-Packard, they put the personal in personal computer. The Macintosh, released in 1984, was the first commercially available personal computer to combine a point-and-click mouse with the concept of a graphic user interface, key features that Steve Jobs appropriated from Xerox. It caused a revolution from which there was no turning back, and the knockoffs began immediately. Bill Gates borrowed the same graphic user interface for Windows that Jobs had borrowed from Xerox, and Windows became the Big Mac of operating systems. It was sort of like Pat Boone's version of Little Richard's Tutti Frutti. Gates kept enough for Windows to be recognized as the original version, but otherwise it was completely deflavorized. Now that everyone owned a computer, it seemed the next logical step was to somehow connect them all together into a large network. Looking back, it all seems so utopian. What could possibly go wrong? On April 30th, 1993, the source code for the World Wide Web was released by Tim Berners-Lee. Within a year, people had the content of hundreds of libraries at their fingertips, but searching for anything was next to impossible because nothing was indexed. By 1996, that had all changed. Lycos became the first search engine company to go public on the NASDAQ, valued at an unheard of $300 million after its first day. Yahoo was not very far behind and went public that same year, ending its first day with a record-breaking valuation of $848 million. The tech industry was a generation or two after the primordial video game Pac-Man, but know it or not, they used it as their business model. Gobbling up companies became their obsession, and they absorbed businesses, products, and huge chunks of real estate left and right, transforming into the Borg from Star Trek. Money was no option, resistance was futile, and competition, privacy, affordable housing, and freedom of choice vanished. Multimillionaires were made overnight. They all started buying houses throughout the Bay Area, paid for in cash, hundreds of thousands of dollars above asking price. They were building a religion, ushered into Fort Knox like Andy Warhol over the velvet rope at Studio 54.